Welcome to the Red Text.
A crossroads of the holy and heretical.
Join us now for another episode in Unholy Communion.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Red Text podcast. My name is Fonzie. I am Witch Illumisente on Instagram and Twitter.
And my name is Ryan, aka the Mestizo Mystic on Instagram, or just at Mestizo Mystic on Twitter. How you doing today, Fonzie?
Hi, yeah, you might notice that my audio is trash right now, and I'm having some technical difficulties on my side of the podcast. I don't know what's going on. I think it might be my mixer that's being stupid, but just as long as you can hear me and you can I think that's all that really matters. I can get I can figure this out for next time, but yeah. This is kind of annoying because it's strange because it feels like I'm just like on a web call and not like talking, like recording a podcast episode.
Come on, Mercury, retro shade.
Yeah, retro shade. It's that retro shade fucking with my electronics. This is really annoying. But anyways, other than that, I'm okay. It's so unbelievably hot over here. Like it was 100 degrees today in my part of Los Angeles. It was so hot. It was disgusting.
That is disgusting. That's really disgusting.
Oh my god, it was so bad. I felt like I was going to pass out. It was so hot, and I was just sitting in my car. It was so bad, and just sitting. And my bedroom faces west, so I'm getting like all of the really aggressive afternoon sun is just beaming into my bedroom. So like, it is so hot on this side of the house. It's so bad, but. Other than that, I can't really complain. I'm going to Vegas tomorrow, which is fun.
Hell yeah.
I'm going to say that I'm going for my birthday. I'm not going to say when my birthday is because that would be magically irresponsible. But I am going for my birthday. So my birthday is around the time that I'm going to Vegas, which is the time that we're recording this, which you also... listeners don't know when, so I feel comfortable actually just saying that. But yes, at the time of this podcast, my birthday is very close to it, so I am going to Vegas for my birthday. Oh well, I just realized that I mentioned that I was going to Vegas on Instagram. You know what? Whatever. You guys don't know what the day is, so yeah, I'm going to Vegas tomorrow for a couple of days. That should be really fun. I'm leaving a hot climate, which is Los Angeles, and going to an even hotter climate, which is Las Vegas. Which I'm not necessarily happy about, but there are pools and alcohol and lots of cute boys, so that'll distract me from how hot it is. How about you, Ryan? How you doing?
I'm all right. I almost burned down my bedroom last night, so I definitely need to invest in a fire extinguisher.
Yes.
If anyone saw my Instagram, I mean, this is going to be posted weeks from now, what I'm announcing, but basically I was consecrating some rosaries to Santa Muerte, and I put some, they're in between taper and chime candles. I don't know necessarily if they have a specific date, but I had 4 candles in my cauldron, which is full of ash, because that's where I put all the ash of shit, whether it's like a sigil I'm burning or some herbs I'm burning. And so I put the 4 candles in there because I was like, oh, this is fire safe. I'm in my bedroom, and I'm sleeping with it in my bedroom. So it's not like technically unattended. If I need to get up and put it out in the middle of the night, I can, if something goes wrong, which it did. And so I fell asleep at like almost 1:00, and the candles are like almost burned out. So I'm like, oh, this is fine. I wake up in the middle of the night from some already vivid dreams I was having, and my room's just filled with a hazy smoke, and my eyes are like burning. I'm like, what the fuck? Didn't know what time of day it was because I didn't want to look at my phone or clock, and I didn't want to open my doors because I didn't want to set off the smoke alarm. And so I opened the bedroom window. Luckily, I live literally right near the ocean, so I just dealt with it. I just opened the window, went back to sleep, and let it like aerate. But now my room just smells like smoke. But I think what happened is one of the candles burned down, and because there was such an amalgamation of shit in my cauldron, from like half-burned sigil papers to herbs and shit, something caught on fire, and it was just smoldering. Like it smells like paper was burning all night long in my room, and it wasn't good for my lungs either. I grew up asthmatic. And so that scared the shit out of me because I wake up and I'm like, oh my god, what the fuck is happening? Like, what can I use to extinguish it? Luckily, the bottom of my hydro flask is just the same, or like slightly smaller than the like circumference of my cauldron. So I was able to just smash it and snuff it out. And then I just had to open my window and let the smoke fumigate. All this to say, everyone practice fire safety. I need to get like a mini fire extinguisher. But other than that, I'm all right. I've expressed that I'm looking for a new job, and work is just burning me. I've been burnt the fuck out. Um, I don't know what's going on in the stars because I've been taking care of my spiritual hygiene, but I've just been feeling like really icky still. So it could just be like mental health. So I'm just like hanging on by a thread, but hanging in there nonetheless. So I am okay. I'm not doing great, but I'm not bad.
Okay. Well, I am always here if you just want to sit and kiki for a while. You and I have been talking every single day, literally. Not even just to kiki, but like we're actually like praying together every single day. So like, that you can just, if you want to reach out and talk to me,
Of course. No, I appreciate that. I don't want to be that bitch, but it's like since my partner and I are in a long distance relationship, we try to video chat every night before we go to bed. And I did really feel a lot better last night cuz he just really held space for me like so easily and without me even me having to ask. And it's again the first time I've been with someone who did that, and I just knowing I'm with someone who supports me through these times and is there for me and willing to like, ask if I'm okay and ask if I want to talk about it if I'm not okay, like it helped me feel better, not like back to 100%, but like knowing I have support like him and you, it's comforting to know I'm not alone through these trying times. So but on the plus side, I start therapy again next week. I haven't been to therapy in like 2 years because of fucking COVID, so that's going to be really beneficial. um yeah, and then magically again, just been getting on my feet, consecrated those rosaries. I have a holy anointing oil that's almost done in like 2 weeks. It's finished on the summer solstice, which is in I think the 21st of June. And today, as of this recording, it's June 8th, so I'm excited for that.
God damn it! You just
so
said
I'm
you
I'm
just
good,
said you
hanging
just
in
said
there,
you
but
just
good.
said
But talking about being scared, waking up in the middle of the night thinking my bedroom's on fire. Today we're talking about fear and fear within a spiritual practice, but also like unpacking fear in its various like forms and terms that we might have grown up hearing about it or being taught, quote unquote, taught what fear is.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So fear is an interesting word. I the reason why I wanted to talk about this particular topic is because as someone who practices and incorporates their faith, their Christian faith into their practice, fear had a really big part of it. There was a lot of fear involved in regards to kind of developing my praxis. So, I want to talk about fear just in general, like kind of being fearful of the things that you do within your practice. Also fear-based fear-based religions and like fear-based kind of conditioning that is kind of instilled in people who kind of grow up in a religious household. And why I think it's bullshit and I call bullshit on it, and why there's actually stuff in scripture that actually denounces fear of God, and all of these like words, these like buzzwords that you hear, like when you go to like a church and say like how people proudly claim that they are, God-fearing, Christians, and how it's like it's something that you should attain. You should be fearful of God, fearful of his wrath, when it's in the Bible that you actually shouldn't. So, and I have the receipts, I can show it to you. So kind of just fear in general. There's a lot of fear when it comes to, doing the things that we do, but also there's a lot of beauty in practicing with fear and then overcoming the fear and realizing why you were scared in the first place and the value that fear has, and why fear can really give you a lot of perspective after the fact. There's a reason why fear exists. It's a survival kind of reaction. It's something. It's a natural thing that happens to us as humans. It helps us survive. But I think there's we don't want to become kind of like servants or slaves to our fear, because our fear is what actually keeps us in the same place all the time. And this is something that I wanted to I've been talking to Ryan with you recently within the last couple of weeks, because I've been kind of, I'm without getting too specific in what I'm doing, because I don't think that I'm ready to like really talk about it, but I've been doing magic that has it kind of goes more towards, you know, kind of things that we would consider darker and a little bit more scarier and a little bit more anxiety inducing, I guess I would say. So but it's helped in doing these things. It's kind of helped me grow in my practice, and it's actually humbled me and it's enlightened me in a bit, in a way. So yeah, so coming out of like this experience, these experiences that I'm having, even though I'm kind of going into it with a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of apprehension, um, vanquishes my fear. And then after I kind of evaluate it, I kind of realized, it's like, well, the fear actually made it so much more worth doing for some reason, you know. So there is a value in fear in some ways, and there's also things that I think fear also kind of makes you like it kind of forms an it kind of develops into some sort of illusion when it comes to like a fear-based religion, where it's kind of making it's making people kind of compliant and kind of I hate this because this is like a very right-wing kind of narrative, but like sheep, you know, kind of following that, you know, you're supposed to kind of sit in fear when it comes to your relationship with God. So it kind of goes back and forth. It's interesting the way I see fear. But how do you kind of see that I guess, I don't know if you could call it a dichotomy, but yeah, I guess a dichotomy.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult, and I'm still unpacking it myself and within my own practice. But I think there's various levels to fear, right? Like there's healthy fear, like, you know, putting your hand on the stove. You don't want to put your hand on fire because you know you're going to get hurt, you know you're going to get burned. But then there's also, like, I feel unnecessary fear, almost like anxiety, right? Like when our mind makes up situations of things that may or may not happen, but then we allow that to affect our mind, body, and spirit, even though that outcome has and may not ever actually happen, right? So it's kind of like this scale of fear. In my relationship with God and the divine, I try to replace the word fear more with like the sense of awe, because that's how my older brother, who's a theologian who was in seminary, kind of described it to me, is rather than like being scared of God, it's more so like so powerful and so unknowable that we're just kind of like, whoa, like what? And that's kind of like the more vibe. I'm not gonna say that. That's kind of like the sense I get more from fear, at least how I interpret fear, like a very just awe-inspiring and like awestruck moments. Because yeah, I'm just like, even if we're just using Christianity as an example, God is touted as this all-loving, all-merciful deity, right? And so if they're all loving, all forgiving, and all merciful, then why should we be scared? And I know that in certain novenas and prayer books that I've gotten from the Catholic store, it talks about fear in the sense of like, oh, like fear, or like the gift of holy fear, for example, with the Holy Spirit, is like you want to be blessed by the Holy Spirit, so you make sure you don't do things that are going to offend, for example, your parents or your parents in heaven, like God or Jesus and Mary, whatever. Which makes more sense than just being like outright like scared, right? Because when you think of like, oh, if you want to be a good Christian, you got to fear God, that sounds like an abusive relationship. Like, why do you want me to love a figure
Exactly.
that's both in and outside of myself, but out of fear, not actual unconditional love? That sounds like a very weird, as you said, dichotomy and juxtaposition, and hypocritical in a sense. So I would rather frame my relationship with God in the sense of like, wow, God is so awe-inspiring, and I'm so awestruck when I contemplate and experience God. Like, I'm scared of participating in things that are going to draw me away from that, but not scared of being in that relationship with God or scared of that God, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense, and I that is the philosophy that I'm developing now within my practice. But when I was growing up, I was taught to fear God. That is literally what I was taught, was to fear God. That you were supposed to fear God. You were supposed to fear His wrath because that makes you obedient. That that makes you, and that's, and if we don't even want to talk, if we take it out of like out of religious context, that is how, you know, tyrants and abusers make people compliant and obedient, is through fear. So, and it even just like your manager at work, they like an abusive manager, like a bad manager, will instill fear into people to keep them to keep them compliant, and it's not obviously it's a very toxic relationship, but it kind of goes all it kind of covers all of those grounds. So what that does for me, this is just personally what I see when we bring fear into the conversation in regards to our relationship with God, it totally invalidates boundaries. There's no conversation about boundaries when it comes to my spiritual court and with me. I am meant, based on the teachings of the church, which was taught to my parents and then therefore an extension taught to me, I was supposed to be blindly obedient. I was not supposed to question anything. I was supposed to honor my elders and my the church, just because they are those people, just because they are my parents, and they are. And I don't. There's also this whole idea. I've had this conversation before with my parents where I was like, why is me disagreeing or having a different opinion or questioning something dishonoring you? Like, how is that dishonorable when I just have a question or I want to say something or I don't see things the same way? I just believe something different. And it kind of goes into the same idea where how do you have a loving relationship with something that you're scared of? It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. So the idea of having a fearful relationship with God or with anything or with any relationship that you want to cultivate, I understand, like, kind of initially before you kind of get into the relationship, having some sort of anxiety or apprehension because of the fear of the unknown, which is totally understandable. Not knowing what's going to happen is obviously very makes anybody very anxious. But to continue your relationship knowing that is a relationship based on fear is right. It is exactly what you said. It's an abusive relationship. It's exactly what actual, like, abusive relationships in real life are based on. It's based on fear. It's based on fear of of trigger warning, sexual assault, physical assault, or emotional trauma or anything. You know what I mean? So it's like the idea of fear being part of some sort of loving relationship, it just doesn't make sense to me, especially because we're, like what you said, is we're expected to love each other, love God, love our parents, honor our parents. I just don't see the relationship with fear and with love. It just doesn't make sense to me. They don't add up, you know.
Yeah, I also like to think of the opposite of love being fear and not hate, right? Because hate at the end of the day is just fear of the unknown, right? Like when we think of people who hate immigrants or hate foreigners of any kind or hate their neighbor because they're of a different nationality or origin or gender or sexuality, it really just boils down to fear and ignorance. Like not even like no one, at least off the top of my head, I don't truly believe that anyone just hates someone else just to hate that person. It always to me boils down to some other emotion, which generally is ignorance or fear. So like you're saying, Fonzie, it's like, why am I going to fear this all-loving God? Because yes, God is unknowable. To try to put any type of parameter or label on something that's completely infinite and without confinement to any label, like how are we going to put a label on something that can't be confined to a label? Like that to me is awe-inspiring. So I'm just like, wow, imagine being so all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-pervasive that you can't put a label on it. Like that scares me and strikes fear in my heart in the sense of like, whoa, that's like when I think of like the universe, right? The universe is infinite. Like we only know a fraction of the universe, and to think of that we're such a speck of dust on Earth, which is a speck of dust in this galaxy out of the what millions of galaxies out there, like that puts fear in me because I'm just like, what? That's so fucking hard for me to comprehend. Not fears and like, ooh, that like scares me. Like I don't even want to think about that. Like that makes you want to not even be a part of it anymore, you know? So I think it's like unpacking how we view fear and really acknowledging the different aspects and layers that fear possesses, not just viewing it how we've been talking in the sense of what we were taught is like, you better fear God, otherwise you're gonna get your ass beat.
Right. And I think, well, before I get into that, I just want to, because I have the receipts, I need to make sure that we have the receipts. If we want to go to scripture, all right. If you go to 1 John 4:18, in that really cute little book, I don't know if you guys ever heard of it. It's called the Bible. I don't know if you guys ever heard of this book. It's a really good book. But in 1 John 4:18, it says, "Such love has no fear, because perfect love expels all fear. If we are afraid, it is for fear of punishment, and this shows that we have not fully experienced his perfect love. We love each other because he loved us first." If someone says, "I love God," but hates a fellow believer, that person is a liar. For if we don't have, for if we don't love people we can see, how can we love God, whom we cannot see? And he has given us this command: those who love God must also love their fellow believers. That's Matthew 5:43 for some reason. Anyways, that's in the Bible. So, like what Ryan said, and I think we've mentioned this in prior episodes before, is that fear, that hate is not the opposite of love. Fear is the opposite of love, because hate is born out of fear. It is born out of ignorance. It is born out of the willingness to choose to be ignorant. So it is impossible to have a loving relationship with your spiritual court or with God if you fear them. So I know that we have, if you guys go back, I know that at the time of this recording, the episode hasn't been published yet, but by the time this episode is released, our sin episode would have been published by then. So we kind of have to kind of go into the idea of sin, because that's kind of where the fear of God is kind of based in, right? It's how we see sin. So one of our friends, fellow podcaster W of St. Anthony's Tongue, has a very, very kind of a great comprehensive kind of way of explaining how they see sin. And I kind of subscribe to the way they portray it, which is like, sin is not, and this is, we share this, you and I, Ryan, because we've talked about this before. Sin is not a checklist of things that you're not supposed to do to make God like you more, to help win your place in heaven. Sin is something that is anything that keeps you from connecting to God, or kind of severing those communication lines with God, or anything that distances you from God. That is sinful. But it's not literally like you having premarital sex is a sin. You having sex with someone who might be of the same gender as you is sinful. It's just not what it is. Like a checklist, that's just propaganda, y'all. And this could be something that we could talk about in regards to opinion. Sure, if you think this is more opinion based, that's totally fine. You can believe me. But to be able to practice like the way that we do as folk Catholics, you do have to deconstruct the idea of how you see sin, because you are going against the teachings of the church as a folk Catholic or as a folk Christian. So the idea of sin, or your philosophy of sin, kind of has to shift a little bit. So I implore folks to kind of dissect that a little bit and see what you can kind of figure out.
Yeah, I agree. It's in any practice, really, not even just folk Catholic. Like, there's always going to be things we need to unpack and unlearn. Like, for instance, I really want to at some point expand my witchcraft aspect of my practice by diving into more traditional folkloric witchcraft, which does involve working not just with devil spirits of the land, but also like the devil, right? Or Baphomet, Lucifer, whatever. But I have still not deconditioned and unlearned the stuff that I was raised Catholic to believe regarding Lucifer and Satan and those things. So when I say that I'm scared of that stuff, again, I can fully acknowledge that comes from a sense of unknowing. I don't know enough to dabble in those things. So yes, I'm scared because I don't want to get myself into something that I don't know how to fix, or something that's going to get attached to me or linger around me and hurt a loved one, you know? So yes, I'm scared and fearful because I'm not going to fuck around with something that I don't know how to properly handle. Just like you don't pick up a gun expecting knowing how to handle it when you've never touched or shot a gun in your life, right? Like, that's a pretty extreme example, but also magic can be used to kill people just as much as a firearm can. So I think the fear in both of those situations is completely comparable. But again, I don't know if that really provides clarity on how I'm trying to explain how I perceive fear in my practice, but that's something I wanted to give context on. Like, there's stuff I want to explore, but the fear of not knowing how to properly do it is what keeps me from doing it, because I haven't yet learned and gotten the proper experience to do so, if that makes sense.
No, I totally agree with you. Fear is important. Fear is such an important feeling to have. Fear is an important emotion to have because fear helps us survive. And your kind of or anyone's reaction to something that is unknown, or something that is like something like what you said, expanding your witchcraft and working with land spirits, you're allowed to be scared of that. You're allowed to be kind of fearful of that because you don't know what's going to happen. That is a healthy amount of, that is a healthy kind of fear. But when we're talking, but you also have to also, I don't know, I'm not kind of like pointing at you in any way, because that's definitely, we've had this conversation before. But what I'm saying is, when you are fearful of something that you do want to kind of explore, you have to ask yourself why, right? And that's the thing that you kind of need to deconstruct. So, and that's how you start kind of deconstructing that idea, and it therefore broadens your horizons, and also it broadens your practice. It makes you so much more you gain perspective, which I think is always really important, because you gain perspective on how other folks practice. It also implements a lot of new great things into your own practice, because you're not just kind of keeping yourself in this box that you just kind of keep yourself in for the rest of your life, and I think that's really important, especially because we do give ourselves that title as witches with a capital W. We never take that pointy hat off. We always have to make sure that hat is always on. We always have to make sure that we're always constantly working. And I'm also not going to go ahead and say that every single person that follows us or listens to the podcast calls themselves a witch. I'm just saying that that's the perspective that Ryan and I come from, because we are both folk Catholic, folk Christian practitioners, but we are also witches. So we also have a kind of a witchcraft side of how we practice our spirituality. So it's totally okay to, going into witchcraft from New Age spirituality was terrifying, because I had no idea where I was going with this. New Age spirituality is all about love and light. That's easy. That's a piece of cake. But like, once you start diving into like more like things that are actually witchcraft, it kind of it shifts your mindset a little bit. Once you start reading books about blood and cursing and bones and the dead, it's things that you've been taught your entire life to stay away from. But you were never taught why you shouldn't stay away from them, why you should learn about these things, why you should try to practice, and why you should try to see yourself, incorporating these techniques. We were never taught that because we were conditioned to stay away from them, So that's why it's really important. It's okay to feel fear. Fear is important. Fear is a good thing. It helps us survive, like I said. But it's also really important to ask why. Why are you scared? Like, why are you terrified of this thing? And it's okay to be scared, but also ask yourself why.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's where the problem with fear comes in, is when we just allow that unknowing to override our thoughts, actions, and the way we move about our practice in the world. Because then again, like you said, Fonzie, we're not doing the asking of the questions of, okay, why am I fearful of this? Like, that's where unlearning and unpacking comes in, right? Like, you have to really, and that comes with a lot of self-awareness. If you don't really develop critical thinking, discernment, and self-awareness, you're never really going to be able to undo that fear. Like, think about people who grow up in the conservative Bible Belt who are only surrounded by people who share racist beliefs. If you're only surrounded by people who share racist beliefs, then chances are that you're also going to adopt those racist beliefs. And if you're only surrounded by white people with those racist beliefs, cisgender, heterosexual white people, chances are you're never going to be able to unlearn that because you put yourself in this bubble. Then when you actually go out into the real world, say you end up wanting to decide to move into a really big city that's diverse, now you're suddenly surrounded by people of all shapes and colors and genders and ethnicities, and you're like, oh shit, wait a minute, like now I'm having this cognitive dissonance of like my whole world is collapsing because all I've ever known is the racist white cisgender heterosexual Bible Belt. So then that poses a crossroads for you. Are you just gonna navigate that environment with those held beliefs? Chances are you may, and then chances are you may begin to reach out and be like, oh, maybe what I was taught and grew up around isn't actually true, and then start going through that process of unlearning and become an entirely different new person. We only have two paths: either consistently learn, unlearn, grow, and evolve, or stay the same as it ever was, and go from there.
Right, exactly. And I think this is also why I think it's so important to try to be part of a community. Because, I mean, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with being a solitary witch, but you can still be part of a community of people that you know and trust and still practice alone. Because you have a support system. You have folks who have done these things and have, been able to produce good results. And you have someone who could potentially guide you through things that you've never tried before. So I think it's really important to try to alleviate that fear, or try to address, or even addressing that fear, right? If let's say for example, I do have something that I wanted to do that scared me, that I didn't necessarily know how to go about doing, but I knew that it was good for me and my practice. The first thing I would do is ask questions. I would look it up and I would ask questions to folks who I know have done these things to get some feedback and some input. Let me see if this is something that I'm ready to do now. Let me see if I have the skill set, if I have the experience to do, let's say, for example, something that's pretty terrifying to me when I first started doing it was conjuring spirits. Conjuring spirits is not something that you should ever take lightly, because you are literally talking to the dead and you're inviting the dead to commune with you. So you have to do it first off, with sincerity. You shouldn't be doing it for the sake of doing it just because you want to conjure spirits because it's what you think that you're supposed to do. You conjure with spirits to connect with them because you want to venerate them. At the very least, venerate them. To worship them, to thank them, to give gratitude, right? So if it's land spirits, to thank them for the land. And also, something that I think we always forget to do, and I'm guilty of this too, is when we're communing with our land spirits, is asking for their forgiveness, because we do not belong here. This is not our land. So, and it's land that was stolen from them, right? We are their people, but we're also not their people. So I think it's something that we tend to kind of forget. That's kind of a little bit out of the topic, but that just kind of popped into my head. When you're conjuring land spirits, don't forget to ask for forgiveness, and make sure that you make it very clear to them that you're doing everything that you possibly can to keep their land safe. But anyways, getting back to it, is when you're thinking of conjuring spirits, you have to understand that you are conjuring a consciousness, a spirit that either used to be on this land or is an ancient spirit that has been here for a long time and has trafficked with a lot of different people and isn't a necessarily safe thing to do. So you have to go into it with a lot of sincerity. You have to go with it with a lot of information. You have to go into it with a lot of preparation and protection. You have to go into it with some sort of personal testimony, and have like a community and a support group around you so that you can, one, talk about your experiences. Because let me tell you something, the first time I conjured an ancestor, the first thing I wanted to do was tell Ryan. I was like, Ryan, I gotta tell you about this. This is fucking incredible. Let me tell you how I did it. Let me tell you what happened. Let me tell you when I cried. Let me tell you what I did. And that's all I wanted to do. And that's what kind of like sparked my interest in, being more connected to the spirits of my land, the ones that live out in the woods, the one that lives out in this beach that I like to go to all the time, So it's like, once you kind of get over that threshold, with the help of the people that you have around you, and people who know what they're doing, you kind of like run with it. It's like you go guns blazing. You never really stop, because all you want is more, and it humbles you. It truly humbles you. Your fear humbles you, right? Once you conquer your fears, it's just like, whoa, magic is real. This is amazing. No wonder I was scared of this, because this is powerful shit. Like, this is big boy. Ooh, sorry about that. this is like big girl stuff, like this is not like, bullshit. Like, this is real. So that's what my fear has given me. My fear has given me power. My fear has actually given me more power in regards to what I'm able to do, like what I'm capable of.
Absolutely. And oh man, I had a really good thing I was going to piggyback off of, and my thought fluttered away like a little butterfly in the wind. Fuck, what was I going to say? I was going to say thirst for knowledge. Thirst for knowledge begets the transmutation of fear, because if there's one fucked up thing that I don't want to say the new age community or new age movement, because it's not all bad, but like when you and I, Fonzie, both started out in the new age movement, right? And new age spirituality with crystals and singing bowls, and we talk about this more in our spiritual materialism episode. Like I feel like a big emphasis in the new age movement is thinking, oh, all you need to know is within yourself. And I feel like that very much ties in with like individualist culture of not extending yourself to learn from others, especially elders from community, or even becoming parts of communities. Whereas when we embark on this path, be it folk Christianity and folk Catholicism or witchcraft or just mysticism in general, like for me it was the thirst for knowledge. And like you said, also when you see that magic and that power work, you're like, holy fucking shit, there's got to be more, let me learn more. Like when I started praying the rosary and transitioning from my new age practice into more of a folk magic practice, I was just like, yo, this shit's doing more for me than this new age metaphysical shit ever did before. Not to shit on anyone listening that practices more new age metaphysical spirituality, but trust me, at some point you're likely going to evolve in your practice where you're going to look back and realize that you don't do that kind of stuff anymore, and that what you're doing is 10 times more powerful than what you were doing to begin with. Because me now versus me 7 years ago when I first started, or 6 years ago, whatever, like I would not have imagined the type of spell work I do, the type of devotionals and spirits, even if it's just saints and Mary and Santa Muerte that I work with now. I never would have saw that coming years ago. And so the thirst for knowledge really begets also the transmutation of fear into wanting to know better and do better and become better. And yes, in an egotistic sense, become more powerful, because you can do much more when you really tap into this powerful ebb and flow of witchcraft and of magic, and these currents that are constantly around us that you don't notice until you look outside of yourself rather than inward. But also at the same time, the more you look outside and connect with that energy that's outside of yourself, the more you tap into yourself inward, if that makes sense. So all that to say, the thirst for knowledge for me is what really led me down the path of overcoming my fear and wanting to learn more and do more. And I really think that if we want to learn to transmute our fear, it has to come from a place of wanting to know better and do better. Just like me earlier when I was stating how at some point I do want to explore practicing more folkloric and traditional witchcraft, but I need to learn about it first. I'm not just going to jump head first into making a blood pact with the local land spirit before actually knowing how to like properly go about that. I'm not going to just go shed blood and offer it to a spirit I've never gotten to know before.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't just like jump into it just because we're saying you shouldn't be scared. No, that's bullshit. Like, that's, and also we're also not saying you shouldn't be scared. I'm just saying that what are you asking yourself when you are scared, when you are fearful? You have to assess your fear. That's what's really, really important. And it's in all aspects of your life. I think it's really important before you start kind of exploring like the aspects of like traditional or just witchcraft in general. You have to ask yourself why you're scared of God. That's number one. Before you do because that's where it starts. Like, your fear of God needs to kind of be assessed first, and what that means to you. Because I think you're right. There is an aspect of God that I am fearful of, but it's not necessarily a fear of because I'm scared of them. I am scared of not feeling them or being in communion with them. I with all the work that I've actually done in regards to, and we've said this before, I have a relationship with God, but it's a very distant relationship with God. I don't address God directly all the time unless I'm in prayer. But like when I'm doing like my workings, when I'm actually doing my spell work or my magic, I don't work with God. I work with beings who work with God, who work with God directly on my behalf. Okay, so but at the same time, because you are connected indirectly with God, you do have to kind of access that part of your brain that is terrified of what God may think of you. Because a lot of the times what God, if you are scared of what God thinks of you, that's usually what you're scared of, what society thinks of you, or what society might think of what you're doing, or what the church thinks of you. You're terrified of what the church has to say about you. And if that's the case, if that's where it comes down to, where if you deconstruct it enough and you realize, oh, it's not really God I have a relation, I'm scared of, it's the church. I was like, then everything that you feel about fear and your religion is bullshit. Because that means that you were conditioned. And that's totally okay. So was I. I am still constantly deconstructing my idea of how I feel about the things that I was taught in church. Now, I have very, very, and I've talked about this before, especially with Ryan, in detail, I have very, very unorthodox feelings about Christianity and the way my heavenly court sees me. I really do. And it's mostly UPG, right? There are things that I see about like how personally, and I'm gonna be very clear about this. This is me, this is my opinion, this is personal. I don't think that my heavenly court hates Satanists. I said it. I don't think that I think they actually I think my personal heavenly court really respects people who are Satanist or practice within the religious tenets of Satanism, because the religious tenets of Satanism is what Christians are supposed to be practicing. So in my heart of hearts, this is just my personal opinion, I think my heavenly court would actually prefer to spend time with my Satanist friends than my Christian family members.
Could you give examples of some of the tenets that you're talking about that you feel that Christians should be embodying more, and like the reason why you feel like your spiritual court would rather hang with them than maybe more like Protestant evangelical Christians that really just pick and choose what they want to believe and practice?
You want me to give some examples of the tenets that I think that my heavenly court would agree with? Okay, 1 through 7, because there are 7 tenets of Satanism, and I think they would agree with all of them. But I think the one that they should agree with the most, especially as Christians, because this is something that we're taught, especially from Jesus's mouth, is the first tenet, which is one should strive to act with compassion and empathy towards all creatures in accordance with reason. Doesn't that sound like love thy neighbor?
That very much sounds like love thy neighbor. Both human and otherwise.
Right. There are this is tenet number 7. The struggle for justice is an ongoing and necessary pursuit that should prevail over laws and institutions.
Yes.
Can we talk about why Jesus died in the first place? Okay. Let's see. Tenet 3. One's body is inviolable, subject to one's own will alone. That's self-explanatory. Don't fuck with my body. You have no rights over it, over anyone's body. Tenet number 4. The freedoms of others should be respected, including the freedom to offend. Hello? To willfully and unjustly encroach upon the freedoms of another is to forego one's own. I love that one. The freedom to offend.
I'm bringing up the tenets right now so I can read them along with you.
Tenet number 5. Beliefs should conform to one's best scientific understanding of the world. One should take care never to distort scientific facts to fit one's belief.
We're looking at you, flat earthers.
Mm-hmm. Or those anti-vaxxers.
Or anti-abortionists. I'm just putting it out there. I'm gonna say it.
Right. Tenet number 6. People are fallible. If one makes a mistake, one should do one's best to rectify it and resolve any harm that might have been caused. So hold yourself accountable.
That and forgive thy neighbor, you know?
There you go. Yep. Tenet number 7, the last tenet. Every tenet is a guiding principle designed to inspire nobility in action and thought. The spirit of compassion, wisdom, and justice should always prevail over the written or spoken word. So that also means that just because it's in the fucking Bible doesn't mean that you should do it. That also means stop fucking cherry picking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And also, it's up to your interpretation, right? It's not cut and dry like what fucking conservative Christians always say. So in saying that, when I always tell people in regards to like, you know, kind of other practices that make them nervous, I've had this conversation with my cousins before, where I was like, we kind of brought up Satanism because I have friends who are Satanists and I adore them. I absolutely adore them. And I brought up this conversation before with my cousins where I'm just like, I know the word Satan really makes you nervous, and I understand that Satan himself makes you nervous, but the people who actually practice this religion, you would actually agree with them. You would agree with them more than you think. So look up the tenets and see how you feel about them, and you'd be shocked. But it's that buzzword, right? That Satan buzzword that really makes them nervous.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to reconcile the fact that like there's always going to be extremists no matter what ideology you're looking up, right? Like you can't assume like just because there
Oh yeah,
was some edgelord Satanist who tried to murder someone for a human sacrifice that represents all Satanists. Just like the right-wing conservative Christians who are still out there shooting up schools or just pushing legislation that oppresses minorities and those, you know, less empowered because of the society we live in, like that doesn't represent every single fucking Christian, you know, that obviously clearly doesn't represent us. So I think it's also important to reconcile, like, not everyone in a certain ideological framework are always going to be the exact same person. Like you can't, that's like saying one person represents an entire ethnicity just because they're all the same ethnicity. So I just want to put that out there because obviously some people might be like, what about the Satanists who did so like X, Y, and Z and did this horrible act? Well, then that's what they did.
yeah. Let's talk about who's that awful man, that awful serial killer, the Night Stalker. What the hell's his name?
The Night Stalker?
Something Ramirez.
Oh, I don't know the name.
Whatever. His name doesn't matter anyway because he's trash, or he was. He like one of the most prominent things that he ever did was yell "Hell Satan" in the courtroom, and he had like a pentagram on his like palm or whatever, right? I was like, I think that we're more concerned the fact that he murdered people,
Right.
the fact that he yelled hell, and also the fact that he yelled "Hell Satan" goes against the tenets of Satanism. So you know, so that's what I'm saying is that you gotta read and use your common sense, because I don't think God, what the fuck is his name? Killer Ramirez. God damn it.
I'm also just looking at the website of the Satanic Temple because I was misinformed and I was confusing it with the Church of Satan because I was associating it with Anton LaVey, but it clearly states over here that they are confused with the Church of Satan when they're actually in opposition to one another. And the Satanic Temple sounds fucking sick. I'm on their about page and it's just saying like the mission of the Satanic Temple is to encourage benevolence and empathy, reject tyrannical authority, advocate practical common sense, oppose injustice, and undertake noble pursuits. Like, fuck yeah. And some of the stuff they've done: we've publicly confronted hate groups, fought for the abolition of corporal punishment in public schools, applied for equal representation when religious installations are placed on public property, provided religious exemption and legal protection against laws that unscientifically restrict women's reproductive autonomy. Like, and the list goes on and on. Like, oh my god, have I been a Satanist this whole time?
It sounds really great, especially with their vision, kind of like their vision statement. I know that there have been some, like, they're not perfect. They have issues, I've heard. I don't know what they are, but I've heard that they kind of, I think they're a little overzealous a little bit. So like they say a lot of these things and I think they don't deliver. I don't know exactly what it is. I don't want to speak I don't want that to be misplaced because I'm not entirely sure. I don't have the facts. I don't have any literature in front of me to prove that, but I've heard that they're not perfect, which is fine. Like, I like what I like their mission statement. I like their tenets. I like what they believe in. And I like the fact that um, they fight against patriarchy. They fight against homophobia, transphobia. They hate institutions. They hate corporate America. They hate money, big money. So like I like the foundation of it. It makes a lot of sense. That's like you said, it makes a lot of sense when you take it out of its, like, I like take the Satan part out of it. It just sounds
Mm-hmm.
really nice, lovely, and a bunch of people that just want to get along and be happy and just be nice people. Do you know what I mean? Add the Satan part of it, it just makes it kind of cool,
I mean, I'm a sucker. I'm a sucker for spending money. I'm on their gift shop right now, and apparently they also have their own hot sauce.
Oh.
So
Oh,
just plugging the Satanic Temple, y'all. We are not getting paid for this. I just like hot sauce. The Satanic Temple has their own official hot sauce. They have garlic chipotle, ghost pepper, jalapeno, and mango habanero for $12 a bottle, and they're 5 ounces. That I want it to wreck my hole.
I can fuck up a mango habanero hot sauce. I love any mango habanero. Oh, that's making my mouth water.
Habanero is
That's
the
making.
spiciest I can deal with.
I think me too, but that's pretty like high up there. Like that's probably like I have a pretty good tolerance for spice. Like it's kind of annoying because like sometimes it's just I'll ask for super spicy and I don't feel shit at all. I have a very high tolerance for spicy food. But habaneros, like if it's like crushed up habaneros and like salsa, I can fuck that up. I can fuck that up real good.
Oh, that shit will have me like that. Habanero is the hottest I can go. Like jalapeno, I can handle jalapeno easy peasy. Don't give me fucking ghost pepper. If you give me a ghost pepper, I will be in the bathroom for at least 2 to 3 business days.
but by that time, your Amazon package will arrive. So that's perfect.
I don't even know if I'll be alive at that point to accept it.
Oh man. But yeah. Anyways, so fear. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about fear. So like when things like this kind of come to you that you've been taught that are antithetical to how you're supposed to practice or how you're supposed to live your life, or the friends that you meet that just might not, that you're not supposed to get along with, right? Like for example, when I did blasphemy, when I did that event in May, when I was reading, my booth, which has a complete Marian altar on it, was right in front of a booth called Witches and Devils. And the proprietor of this business, name is Adrian. Hello, Adrian. I hope you're listening to the podcast. I told you about it, so you better be listening to the podcast. And their partner, Joaquin, are Satanists. And you'd think that these two kind of opposites would actually hate each other. But we fell in love with each other. I love them so much. They're some of the sweetest, kindest people I have ever met. And especially putting them next to Franny. Franny is disgusting. She's the worst. I hate her. I'm just kidding. She's the best. But yeah, like the four of us, we just like clicked and we just loved each other. And I was sitting with Mary and reading for people while they were behind my clients yelling "Hail Satan," and it was the perfect dichotomy. It was so brilliant. It was the most beautiful dichotomy I've ever seen in my entire life, because it just showed the possibility of folks being able to actually, like, y'all remember those fucking bumper stickers that say coexist in different like religious symbols? Can we actually like instill that in how we live our lives? Because that's exactly what blasphemy was. We were actually coexisting in peace.
Totally. And I mean, especially in the last couple of years, especially because of Instagram and the practice I've evolved within my magical and spiritual tradition and the people I've met. Like, I've met people who I never thought I'd be friends with years ago. I I love my family, don't get me wrong, but they're very much like the type of like, I don't really see color, or like just treat people with respect as you want to be treated. But like, that doesn't, the older you get, the more you realize it's much more nuanced when it comes to befriending people, right? Like, I have people in my lives, in my lives, me, myself, and I lives. I have people in my life um who in the past used to be addicted to certain really hardcore drugs, be it, meth, cocaine, whatever. But now, when I met them, I never would have known that, because they're the sweetest, most unconditionally loving and funniest fucking people. Or I have friends who struggled with houselessness or being in and out of prison. Sorry, I was getting a phone call on my computer. I have friends who have struggled with houselessness or being in and out of prison. If you told me that when I was younger, I'd be like, I'm never going to be friends with someone like that. And now, again, those people nowadays are some of the people closest to me, who I know that if I was getting arrested at 3 a.m., that I would know to call them, because I know they're the ones who are going to have my back. So basically, don't judge a book by its cover, and things that may seem antithetical to you at one point may prove entirely contrary to that in the future. So just be open to nuance, be open to evolution, be open to change. Don't be so rigid in your beliefs. And the reason this all stems from our main topic of fear is that, that fear, that ignorance we hold, keeps us from expanding our mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual growth, be it our own, or meeting community, or families, or things like that. So fear is a bitch, but only if you don't know how to properly utilize and work with it.
That's right. Can we just? I was a little bit triggered when you said I don't see color, because I've had this conversation with family members before, because I fucking hate that. I've always had folks who have said that, very close family members, and they said, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't see color, and I'll throw it back to them. And it's like, why? Why don't you see color? Why don't you see color? You're supposed to see their color. That's the reason why we say you're supposed to see their color and see the value in their color. Because you want someone to value your color. And these are brown folks. These are my family members. These are Filipinos. You're telling me that you don't see color is an excuse that you do not want to address your racism. Your blatant racism. You don't want to address it. You want to ignore it. Especially when it's thrown in your face.
Sorry, go ahead.
When people say things like that, where it's just like, I don't see color, it tells me that they want to avoid the conversation of someone telling them that they are a racist, or that they have racist tendencies or racist mindsets. They don't want to talk about it. It's a cop-out.
Very much that. Yeah, I also feel like, I try to be very nuanced in how I approach people, and I do try to give people the benefit of the doubt, but that's always not the case. And I don't want to say to play devil's advocate, because that's not what I'm doing, but some people, I think, truly believe they don't see color because they don't believe themselves to discriminate others based on the color of their skin. But that doesn't mean that they don't actually have subconsciously held beliefs and actions towards other people of color. I mean, Fonzie, you and I are both Filipino, and Filipinos can be some of the most racist people, especially towards Black people.
Oh, incredibly.
And yet here they are saying, I don't see color. Bullshit.
Right.
Bullshit. Then you better go get some color correcting lenses, or you better get those fucking prismatic glasses that let you see color, because girl, look around you.
Right. I mean, these are the same folks that told me not to play outside because they didn't want me to get dark. So, I mean, these are my grandparents and my aunts and my uncles saying that you can only play outside for a couple minutes because we don't want you spending too much time in the sun because your skin's going to get dark.
Right.
So it's I call bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
So you're telling me that you don't see color, but you don't want me to go play outside because you don't want me to get a tan?
Yeah.
I'm just like, how much money people pay for my tan?
Right.
Do you know how much money people pay for how many of my cis white friends? I don't know why I said cis, because that had nothing to do with, but we always throw that in there. You sissies always get, you never get any of my benefit of the doubt. But yeah, you know how much they love my skin color. I'm just all like, I don't even think I'm that like tan. Like I think I'm pretty pale compared to like other folks who are from the Philippines. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They were like, oh my god, I would, you know, I would kill to have your skin color. I was like, then thank you, I appreciate it. I am beautiful. I know.
I used to get so dark as a kid, and I don't know what happened as I got older. I just like lost the tan that I used to have, which sucks. I had such a beautiful skin tone. I think I still am beautiful, but
You
I'm very.
definitely do.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm just very much more light skinned than what I used to be. Because as a kid, I used to love swimming. I still love swimming. I just the beach I live next to is extremely fucking cold, so the only time I'll swim in it's when it's like 80 plus degrees outside. And it's also the beach I live to is there's so many rip currents, it's so dangerous. But I still love it. Anywho, I used to swim all the time as a kid, and I would come home so dark as fuck. So I would spend hours just in the sun or in the pool or whatever. And I was like, damn, I wish I could do that today. But instead, we're
I
full
know.
time working adults, and we don't get to spend hours in the pool anymore.
I know. I just feel like my skin is like becoming translucent. Like you're just like, you can like see right through it. Like,
Yo, I was thinking like literally yesterday and today, Fonzie, because I have no choice but to be under fluorescent light sometimes. I fucking hate fluorescent light. I hate the way it makes my skin look. I hate the way they make those buzzing sounds. That could just be my neurodivergency, but I hate fluorescent lights with a fucking passion.
it's so unflattering. It's the most unflattering, and it's overhead. Like if you're putting, you
Mm-hmm.
can't put overhead lighting over gays. Don't put overhead lighting on gays. Stop doing it. It's making us look awful. Stop.
Literally, I like a warm, like not orangey warm, but just like a slightly cooler than like an off-white fluorescent that like doesn't make me look like I just like woke up after a 20-year coma with no sun exposure.
No, candles. Candles are the best.
Yes,
Candlelight
can't.
is the candlelight is the most flattering light because it casts hard shadows but in the right places,
Mm,
and the parts where it's casting light is a very flattering. It's flattering on everyone, I think, candlelight.
I agree.
And it's never overhead. It's never like over your head. It's always down low.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So candlelight is always very flattering. It's very flattering on any, you know, in anyone's complexion. I don't know why we're talking about this.
Because
But
I have a fear of fluorescent lights.
oh yeah, you're right. Okay, yeah, we have a fear of unflattering light. That's a very queer thing to say. Happy Pride Month. Happy Pride Month. Hi, gay.
Hi,
Uh,
gay.
but yeah. So, is there anything else that you want to talk about in regards to our little friend Fear, our very
No.
very close friend Fear?
No, I think we did a really good job at like unpacking the word fear, but also not exactly like eliminating it. Like understanding that fear falls upon a spectrum and it's really how you work with fear that shapes your experience with it. Other than
Yes,
that,
I
I think we've covered all of the bases, at least that I can think off the top of my head.
yeah. I mean, I just wanted this to kind of be a conversation about like how we, because this is something that you and I want folks to understand is a lot of what the podcast is in regards to like formally recording it are based on me and Ryan's like informal conversations outside. This is kind of what we did in regards to like when we talked about sin, and what we're talking about now about fear is like, let's talk about fear because we talk about it outside. So this is based on real life experiences, y'all. We're not just like throwing throwing it out you because like, oh, let's just talk about something totally random. This is part of what we're doing in our practice, and it's something that we've had to actively deconstruct. So that's the reason why I felt like it was important for us to talk about, because it is kind of a big part of what we did in regards to developing our practice is deconstructing fear, and it's going to happen for the rest of your life, forever, right? So yeah, just know that we're not just like throwing these random topics at you just for the sake of recording an episode. This is a conversation that Ryan and I actually had, and we wanted to kind of share it with y'all.
Absolutely. Did you have anything you wanted to expand upon anymore about fear, Fonzie?
No, I think I'm good on fear. Go ahead.
Okay, well, then with that, thank you all again for joining us for yet another Unholy Communion with the Red Text Podcast. I'm your co-host Ryan, aka the Mestizo Mystic on Instagram, or just at Mestizo Mystic on Twitter for my silly little musings.
And my name is Fonzie. I am your other co-host. I am at Witch Illumiscente on both Instagram and Twitter.
And we will see you all again for another unholy communion.